So I'd like to welcome all of you to today's webinar, VoiceThread for Multisensory Learning and Introduction. For those of you who might follow me online at Brokansky, that's my Twitter handle, or through my blog at teachingwithoutwalls.com, I have used VoiceThread in my own teaching since 2007. And it's a tool that I'm really passionate about because it has taught me so much about teaching and learning. It's really the first Web 2.0 tool that I started using in my own online teaching back in 2007. And if I go back to that day and age, I can share with you that I was teaching art history at that time online, art appreciation and art history online in a text-based LMS. You know, if we go back to 2007, back at that time there wasn't a whole lot of innovation that had occurred in LMSs, and many of us could argue that some LMSs haven't changed too much to that since that point, but there has certainly been a lot of development that has occurred. And so teaching a visually centric discipline specifically, there were a lot of gaps and a lot of challenges. And so that was one of the things that really brought me to VoiceThread. But once I started using it, it was all the surprises that I found and that I discovered through using VoiceThread that I did not expect, that enriched me, that kind of broadened my horizons as an educator, and that I really think made me become so passionate about online teaching and learning, because early on it allowed me to see all the potential and the possibilities that online teaching bring to educators, and that I feel so strongly so many, and I would even say the majority of online educators still have not had the opportunity, and I really see it as an opportunity to get their arms around and to experience yet. So I'm really excited to share this with you. I just have to warn you, I'm a little bit passionate about it. So we are opening up a Twitter chat for this webinar, and so if anyone wants to participate in Twitter, you are welcome to share some tweets using the Learn, LEARN-WMPB. It's on the screen there at the bottom, Learn WMPB. That's the hashtag for Learn with Michelle. And we're going to go ahead and get started from there. I have a bag of resources. I'm going to point out a few different websites throughout the webinar. And I know a lot of time during webinars people say, can I get that link? Can I get that link? And rather than pasting links throughout the webinar, I like to put them all in one place and just say, go to this link and you'll find all the links. So here is that link for you. I've just put it in the chat window, and you can hold on to that for later. And hopefully you'll stay focused on this webinar. But now, if you click on that now, it'll open up in your background. You can have it for later, and it's got lots of goodies in there that I'm going to be referencing throughout the webinar. One of those goodies you're going to find is a link to my brand new ebook that just got published last week. How to Humanize Your Online Class with VoiceThread. It is really not intended to be a basic how to use VoiceThread book. ebook. I want to be clear about that. It's a deeper dive into pedagogy, and it's an ebook specifically because it's interactive. And it includes more than 20 links to video showcases and excerpts from my own teaching examples. With student permission, and links to sample voice threads that I've created. So it's really kind of an opportunity to step inside the online classroom of an educator who's used VoiceThread. So I'm very hopeful that this ebook will be embraced as a pedagogical resource for educators, and in my view, there's a big gap right now for these types of pedagogical resources using Web 2.0 tools. So this is my contribution, and I do certainly hope that it's a resource to many. I want to thank you, Amanda. I'd like to open a question to you all and invite you to share your answers to this question through the chat box over on the left side of your screen. What tool or tools do you use to foster student-to-student interactions in your online class? And if you're not currently teaching online, if you haven't taught online, think about what tools you might use, okay? So what tool or tools do you use or would you use to foster student-to-student interactions in your online class? And if you could just share in the chat box. So Michael's already using VoiceThread. Wikis are an intriguing answer because they can be so rich with different types of content. Blogs, great. Okay, so case studies, maybe a little bit of a pedagogical application rather than a tool. More wikis. Michael, you've got a site license to VoiceThread. We've got Twitter. Google Hangout coming from Hope, okay. Blogs. Nobody uses discussion forums, really? Discussion boards? Nobody? You're stunning me. Really? No one uses? Okay, there. Thank you. Okay. I was going to say that's usually the mainstay is our discussion forums, right? Okay, so discussion forums, we've got blogs, we've got wikis, we've got Twitter. Yeah, so discussion forums kind of are coming out of our tradition. You know, it's kind of the mainstay. It is. It's the tool that's built in. It's the one thing that's really kind of built into every LMS, and it kind of drives the assumption. Also from the student part, right? That's kind of where students assume that the interactions are going to occur still in online classes. And when we look at a lot of these student-to-student interactions, and it's fabulous to see all these different types of tools being integrated into it. It's great to see that we're seeing integration of things like Twitter and wikis. You know, wikis because we've got so much opportunity there for the collaboration between students. And what I want us to be thinking about as you think about those tools that you use is how much of those student-to-student interactions occur through text-based interactions, and how much of those interactions between your students occur through voice and video interactions, and why that matters, okay? Now that's kind of a big question, but that's one of the things I really want to dig into here. How does it change a student's online learning experience when they start to interact with their peers and their instructor through voice or video versus just text, okay? So that's the question, and I want you to be visualizing in your head and thinking about what that learning experience is like with these tools that you're already using. And with that said, we're going to take a look at VoiceThread, and I want to lay that on top of those experiences and just kind of have a moment to reflect on how different it is, okay? And I think that's important for you to be thinking about that as we go through this process rather than have me tell you how it's different, although I will do that as well, just based upon some research and some evidence, which is also critical. Now, VoiceThread, for those of you who are new to VoiceThread and don't know what it is, we could describe it in general as an asynchronous, which is really important, asynchronous. Unlike Google Hangouts, which was mentioned, although Google Hangouts on air could be archived for later viewing, you know, something like Google Hangouts or Skype, for example, those are synchronous tools which offer the warmth of voice and video, but they require students to be online together all at one time, right? And that, for the most part, is the category that most voice and video tools fall into. And when we look at VoiceThread, one of the ways that it's very unique is because it offers voice and video interactions between users, but it's asynchronous. And so it preserves that student-centered experience. It still offers students the opportunity to come online, to complete their activities, to participate at the time that's convenient for them. And that's critical for success in online learning for students, right? So asynchronous is really key. It's cloud-based, so it can be accessed from anywhere. And essentially, it creates these asynchronous conversations around media that the user has shared in kind of like an online slideshow format. So multiple slides or just one slide, it's up to you, the creator. And then the commenters come in and leave their comments in either voice, video, or text. And so the commenting format is left up to the user, providing options back to the individual who comes into the VoiceThread and leaves their comment. So unlike, and I shouldn't label discussion boards as entirely text, because some of you, particularly the Canvas users out there, are probably in your minds thinking, no, I use Canvas. And you're right, because Canvas is one of these really innovative LMSs that's moving forward, and they're starting to actually integrate asynchronous voice and video into their asynchronous interactions in their discussions, which I strongly applaud. I think that's fabulous. So we are seeing some shifts there as well, but not a lot of use of it from my personal types of interactions. So I think that's pretty interesting and a question we should be pondering. Now, to get you to understand VoiceThread, really what you need to do is you need to see it. So that's what I'm going to do here, is I'm going to launch a video on your own screen. And here's what Michael says. What I like about VoiceThread as well is that you can upload student-created video as well. One of our ed professors has students upload pre-service teachers' video into VoiceThread, and other students offer peer review. Thank you for sharing that, Michael. You're absolutely right, and I'm going to show you an example in a bit of that as well. A lot of people don't know that, actually, that you can upload video, and you can actually caption those videos now too, which is something to be aware of. So I'm going to play this video, and here's what, let me give you a little synopsis about what you're going to see. You're going to see a single slide, an excerpt of a single slide. This is an activity from my actual online class. In the center of the slide, you're going to see a prompt. This is an activity that students, it's a formative assessment that students participated in after reading a chapter in their textbook. This is an introductory history photography class. So they come in, they're engaging in this formative activity, and they're responding to a prompt on the screen. And they've been offered the opportunity to participate in voice, video, or text. And what I want you to be thinking about is how this differs from some of the types of tools that you use in your own class. How does it differ from the learning experience of the students? Okay?
As Janet and Melinda discussed, Stieglitz was moved by the shapes in this image. The man in the straw hat was mentioned, and the crossed suspenders, the fennel leading left. He liked how contrasting with the fennel was the staircase, that they kind of mirrored each other, I think. And then this mast right here created a triangle with the fennel also. And these shapes kind of outlined a story of all these working class people that he had found on this boat. It was kind of a discovery because he had been bored, stuck on this fancy ship with, dragged along by his wife, who he obviously didn't have a lot of common ground with. So I loved that, and I loved hearing his description on how he raced back to his room and got his camera and used his last plate and anxiously waited to see if he had captured the image that he'd imagined and that he had, and it was this perfect image.
Melissa, Janet, and Eve, thank you for those great comments. What we've seen so far here from your comments are 3 good descriptions describing the circumstances around Stieglitz's photograph. So I'm going to come in here and encourage a different direction for maybe another commenter. What's happening with Stieglitz here is he falls into a category of formalist photographers, which really start focusing on looking at a photograph for its aesthetic qualities. And that's what Stieglitz is doing when you look at the way he's describing his photographic work. He's talking about the lines and the shapes and the light, etc. And as we move forward with the decades in photographic criticism, that becomes a problem for many people because there becomes a growing tension within viewers when they look at images like this one that Stieglitz created, because they start to ask questions about what's really going on in the photograph. So what I want to ask you as a viewer now is, how do you feel about that? Are you able to look at this image and just look at it for its formal qualities, or do you see more? Are you left thinking about more about what's really happening in this image, and maybe, what is it that's really happening?
To answer what you were saying, Michelle, to me, what's happening here is there is a really crowded lower class deck of people going back to Europe. So my first thought was that maybe these were immigrants turned away by Ellis Island because of improper paperwork or health issues. So I did a little digging and found that it was more likely that some of these passengers were artisans on 2-year visas for work returning home because of the booming businesses with carpentry and things like that at the time. But that doesn't explain all of them, of course, and certainly not the women and children pictured here. To me, this photograph depicts the crowded and unhealthy conditions of lower class travel of that time.